Wow. Hey, pura vida, mi gente. Much love and respect. Mucho amor y respeto. Thanks for tuning in once again. I appreciate you guys taking the time to do that. Today, we're going to be learning about the true and original founders or settlers outside of the original Indians, right? Outside of the actual local people that were there for thousands of years, the founders of the city we know today as Los Angeles, California, right? We're just going to read general information and then we'll get into a little the detailed history. We must always make sure to add what we already know about certain people, ethnicities, and true history, true genealogy of famous people when they say so-called Mexicans or Native Americans or Indians and all that. Don't just picture one type of people, because we could have people that might be considered so-called black and Indian at the same time. They're two different peoples. So, just for example, we're gonna go ahead and get started on certain websites that are around. If you Google it, again, general info before we get into some of the sources, the scholarly ones. It says here, the lost history of los pobladores. Los pobladores in Spanish, those are people who create towns, pobladores or townspeople, pobladores, townspeople. It says we have a new opportunity to preserve the little known stories of Los Angeles black founders, so-called black. This is from the National Parks Conservation Association. It says the city of Angels is usually associated with Hollywood and the entertainment industry, and most people are aware of the region's Spanish heritage. Less known are the region's original inhabitants. That's true right there, the Chumash and Tonga, right? Or Yaanga, as we're going to read, the Yaanga Tonga people, and even less familiar are the families that founded the city's historic district, El Pueblo de Nuestra Señora, la Reina de Los Angeles, now known as El Pueblo de Los Angeles. These pioneers were a culturally mixed group whose small settlement of 44 people would grow into the nation's second largest metropolis of more than 10 million residents. Mixed cultural group, huh? Says eventually volunteers were recruited from as far away as the Sinaloa region in northern Mexico. And 11 families, 11 men, 11 women, and 22 children would become the first residents of Los Angeles according to a 1781 census. The pobladores were a mix of Spanish-American cast, including Spaniards, Native Americans, and mestizo, a Latin American term for people of both Spanish and Native American heritage. But the census identified the largest percentage of settlers, 10 of the 22 adults, as either Negro, blacks of full African ancestry, dodged the hijack big time, or mulatto, or mixed Spanish and black heritage. And then they're trying to add the African slave. Likely, maybe, perhaps. No, stop guessing. We know that's not true. So take another guess. Be logical about it. So again, I just want to remind everybody. So they're saying, more than half of the people were so-called black, but the others they were saying are so-called Spanish and Indians. So remember what Indians look like. Especially in these times in Mexico, I got a whole book coming that are going to show and display the different caste systems in Mexico and who they would determine Indian, Spaniard, and coyote, and all these other terms, mulatto they had. And you would see a lot of so-called black folks being called Indio or Chino or, all kinds of things. So that's what I'm saying, dodge the hijack big time with their classifications. Basically, these were, in general, people of color, whatever ethnicity they were, because we know they were black Spaniards. We know there was black Indians. So a lot of these people ain't being called black or Negro. They're still being called their other tags. But don't think of them as pale skin just because they're saying that the other people are the so-called Negroes. That's what I'm trying to tell you. It says here in California Historical Society, early Los Angeles, an Afro-Latino town. Early Los Angeles pueblo or town was built in 1781 by settlers of Native American, so-called African or, Negro, and European heritage. There's the Spaniards, so-called Spaniards, That doesn't mean they're pale skin. More than half were black or mixed African and Spanish heritage. This post explores the people of Los Angeles black and mixed African Spanish population during its early development. All right, so again, you guys already know the history. You guys know touch the hijack and apply what we already know. So few may know that more than half of the men, women, and children who in 1781 settled and built the Pueblo of Los Angeles were blacks and mulattoes. As people African, that's the hijack again. So it doesn't mean that the other people who are being called Spaniards or natives are not also so-called black. Okay? So that's the article. I just wanted you guys to see. This is, what you would find if you Google it. It says here, LA ist.com, the black founders of Los Angeles, you may not be aware of. This is a plaque that they have, it says Miriam Matthews stands next to the founders plaque in 1982. Many of us learned in history class in 1781, 44 men, women, and children traveled from Mexico. They were coming from Mexico, all right? So you can refer to them as Mexicans too, under the banner of Spain, settling indigenous lands to found what is now Los Angeles. And this was indigenous lands. There was people already here. One thing I'm going to definitely emphasize today. Make sure we talk about that as well. But did you know that over half of those pobladores, as they were known, had so-called black ancestry or were Negro? For decades, the information was repressed or derided by racist historians and civic leaders eager to Europeanize the past. They're still doing it with the other half. The Spanish, like most colonizers, had systems where they categorized people on racial grounds, says Susan D. Anderson, history curator and program manager at the California African American Museum. The census in Spain, like all European censuses, included information about the settlers that revealed this very complicated racial system of categorization. All right, categorization. You got that's the hijack on these tags. So the reason that we know the background of the demographic background of the settlers is because of this ancient census taken system. All right. So again, another headline. And this is from the UCLA Library Digital Collections, the plaque commemorating the Los Pobladores who founded Los Angeles at El Pueblo de Los Angeles State Historic Park in 1980. All right, this plaque has been changed here and there, but it does tell you who their names are. We're going to look at those as well. Just want to show you guys that. That says LA Times honoring LA's Black founders. Says in the 1950s, a plaque was installed in Pueblo de Los Angeles State Historic Park, paying tribute to the 11 families who founded Los Angeles September 4, 1781, after the long trek north from Mexico. They were called Pobladores, and more than half of them were black, so-called black. Those early Angelinos of African descent had Spanish surnames. They had Spanish surnames, these so-called Africans, This is what I'm trying to tell you guys, all right? This just starts all the hijacks, take out the babies. And their ethnicities would not have been known, and had the plaque not indicated it, people wouldn't know. They were trying to whitewash this history, literally. The plaque soon vanished without a trace. Rumor had it that several recreation and park commissioners had been displeased by its public display of the role blacks played in the city's founding. More than 20 years later, another plaque was put in the same spot. It honored the city's founders without mentioning their race. That plaque was replaced in 1981, marking the city's bicentennial, with a simple bronze tablet that tells the pobladores' names, race, sex, and age. It was installed through the trailblazing efforts of Miriam Matthews, California's first college-trained black librarian. Okay, so you see what they were trying to do. They were trying to erase a little bit of the history. They were hoping people wouldn't pay too much attention. But as in the, again, mind of many, these are people coming from Mexico. So they would say things like this, and like it says here in Urban Intellectuals, did you know Mexicans of African descent established Los Angeles in 1781? The Los Angeles pobladores, or townspeople, like I was telling you earlier, I was right, the townspeople, pobladores, were a group of 44 settlers and 4 soldiers from Mexico who established the famed city on this day in 1781 in what is now California. Remember, people they call so-called black and Indians and so-called Spaniards. The settlers came from various Spanish castes, with over half of the group being of African descent. That's the hijack. National parks forgotten founders, the hidden African ancestry of Los Angeles. And here's an image of one of the descendants. There's Governor Pio Pico. All right, his ancestors were, people who founded it, one of the original families, the Pico. Many people forget about the racial, ethnic, and cultural diversity of these founders, especially of the 26 original pobladores who were of African descent, all right? That's the hijack. People of color, right? That's just how they try to Africanize everybody. We already know. We have debunked a lot of that info. Got to do your genealogy so you can see what we're saying, right? So los pobladores refers to the 44 original settlers, all right? 4 soldiers from New Spain, Spanish Mexico, who founded the Pueblo de Nuestra Señora, la Reina de Los Angeles in 1781, which is now the present-day city of Los Angeles, California. When the governor of Las Californias, Felipe de Neve, was assigned to establish secular settlements in what is now the state of California, after more than a decade of missionary work among the natives, he commissioned a complete set of maps and plans, right? So to be drawn up for the design and colonization of the new pueblo. Finding the individuals to actually do the work of building and living in the city proved to be more daunting task. Neve finally located the new and willing dwellers in Sonora and Sinaloa, Mexico, the people were coming from. But gathering the pobladores was little more difficult. The original party of the new townsfolk consisted of 11 families, that is 11 men, 11 women, and 22 children of various Spanish castas or castes. So this is how they broke them down here in this Wikipedia thing, right? It says one Criollo, a Spaniard born in New Spain. Is that what that really means? And does that mean he's pale skinned? No, it doesn't. That's what I'm saying. It could be a black man too. It says 9 Indios. Again, all these could be melanated folks, these Indians, even though they're from Mexico or wherever they're bringing them from. 1 Mestizo. Mestizo just means mixed with what? Spanish and Indian, huh? Either of these could also be colored folks, right? 8 Mulattoes. Mulattoes could be Indian, could be so many things. It says mixed Spanish and black. Black is not a person, nation, or tribe or anything, so what do you mean? The Spanish could be a so-called dark-skinned person too. So you get it, this could be an Indian, this could be anything else, right? 2 Negroes. Blacks, if they're saying full African, really? Or full Indian, right? Or full Black European. And 1 Peninsular, meaning somebody who was born in Spain. That could be a Sephardic Jew. That could be an Iberian. That could be also a melanated person. So this is what I'm trying to remind you guys, all right? This is very important as we learn this. So it says here in this website, Los Californianos, the Californians in Spanish.org. All right. It says Pobladores del Pueblo de la Reina de Los Angeles, the 11 original founding settler families, Pobladores del Pueblo de la Reina de Los Angeles, listed here in alphabetical order. It says Manuel Cabero of Nayarit. He's a mulatto, right? And his wife, Maria Tomasa Garcia, she's a mulatta as well. They had no children. And so Antonio Mesa, Negro from Sinaloa, right? Antonio Mesa, right? He's a Negro, but he's from Sinaloa. He's Mexican. And his wife, Maria Ana Gertrudis Lopez, who's a mulatta. So what does all this mean? This is what I'm trying to tell you guys. They had 2 children with them, Maria Paula Pascula and Antonio Maria. Then you got Jose Cesario Moreno Marano. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Moreno Marano. And he's listed as mulatto of Sinaloa. And his wife, Maria Guadalupe Gertrudis Perez, a mulatta. They had no children with them. Then says Jose Antonio Navarro of Sinaloa. He's a mestizo. And his wife, Maria Regina Dorotea Gloria de Soto and Rodriguez. She's mulatta. They had 3 children with them. Jose Maria, Jose Clemente, Mariana, Josefa. Then you got Luis Manuel Quintero. He's from Guadalajara, right? In Mexico, he's Negro, right? Quintero, Negro, with his wife, Maria Petra Rubio, who's a mulatta from Alamos. And they had 5 children. Then you got Pablo Rodriguez. It says he's Coyote. We're going to, Coyote, right? Whatever that means. So he's a mixed person, but Rodriguez is a very Sephardic Jewish name. He might be mixed with that and Indian, or what they call it, so-called Black African. And then it says his wife is Maria Rosalia Noriega. She's an Indian from Rosario. Then you got Alejandro Rosas. He's an Indian from Rosario. His wife Maria, Juana Maria Rodriguez. She's Coyote. Then Jose Antonio Basilio. He's an Indian, a Mason with his wife Maria Manuela Calistra Hernandez Amolada of Rosario. They had 6 children. Then you got Jose Maria Vanegas, a mestizo, and his wife Maria Bonifacia Maxima Aguilar, an Indian of Rosario. They had 1 child. And then you got Jose Fernando Lara y Velasco. He's from Spain, they're saying, from Cadiz, Spain. That doesn't mean he could be melanated too. And his wife Maria Antonia Campos, Indian. His wife's an Indian. They had 3 children. Then you got Antonio Clemente Felix Villavicencio, and it says he's a vaquero. In Spanish, that means usually cowboy. It says here herdsman. He's a cowboy. That's his ethnicity, cowboy. That's why I told you to dodge the hijack. You see, they just calling people whatever. And he's from Chihuahua, a Criollo. So he's a Spanish born in the Americas, supposedly. Cowboy. With his wife, Maria de los Santos Seferina, an Indian. So he could be half, They had 1 adopted daughter, Maria Antonia Piñuelas. So this is a compiled and researched by Sheila Ruiz Haro, Los Californianos member, 1603. And these are a lot of the various sources were used to compile this information. 1790 Census, A Demographic History of Colonial California by William Marvin Mason. Some Alta California Pioneers and Descendants by Dorothy Kittenberg Munich, and you see so on and so on. You guys can see right there. So I'm going to go ahead and read now a book real quick. We're going to read a little history here of what we just read. Also, we got to take in mind the history that was already there, the people, all right, that were already in this part, just to remember them as well, the local people and the area that was called Los Angeles, the indigenous people there. A little bit about that. We're not going to get too deep. We are going to get deeper in future videos. We're going to go ahead and get this book right here. It's called Chronicles of Old Los Angeles, Exploring the Devilish History of the City of the Angels by James Roman. Make sure to check out the book, get it if you like it. All right. And we go to chapter 1 of this book. It's called The Bay of Smokes, the birth of Los Angeles. It seems that, that one of the early references to Los Angeles, the Bay of Smokes. So 1781, for 227 years, nobody told the Native Americans they were living in the viceroyalty of New Spain. First, the Spanish won Alta California when they conquered the Mexica or Aztecs in Mexico. Then their explorer Juan Rodriguez Cabrillo headed north, the first European to set eyes on the land that is today's Los Angeles. He stalked a claim for the viceroyalty of New Spain in 1542. What did Cabrillo see? Smoke. A fragrant cloud stoked by 24 Native American campfires permeated the area. Cabrillo named this indentation in the coastline Baja de los Fumos, Bay of Smokes. Yes, LA's discovery was also its first smog joke. Oh man, that's a bad joke. The natives called their home Yaanga or Yaanga, as we guys are going to see, right? Yaanga or Yaanga, Yaanga. But their story is no joke, all right? This ain't no joke. When the Spanish first arrived, the Yaanga people were scattered in little clusters between the ocean and the Los Angeles River. Their center stood where City Hall stands today. They spoke a language similar to the Shoshones on the other side of the Sierra Nevada. They lived on fish, small game, and the flour they milled from acorns. They wore almost no clothing. The Yaanga believed in an afterlife. They practiced cremation and they savored hallucinogens. All right, that's what they're saying here, according to them. During coming of age during coming of age rituals, so that's when they did it. The Temescal ceremonial sweat lodges were used for cleansing and for communion with their god Chinich, but most rituals they revolved around cycles of life. They had no demons. Compared to their colorful relatives, the Aztecs and the Great Plains Indians, the Yaanga were lackluster natives. They didn't farm the land. They didn't make war. They didn't build. They didn't weave blankets or make terracotta pottery. Yet, unlike the Aztecs and Mayans, these simple natives held on to their land and their lifestyles for hundreds of years beyond those sophisticated civilizations. California was one of the last habitable places on Earth that wasn't being planned for the white man's empires. However, in 1781, more than 2 centuries after Cabrillo first smelled smoke, the viceroy needed a plan. Russian fur trappers were venturing too far south from their northwest trading post. This concerned the King of Spain and his viceroy in the New World. To protect Spanish holdings in California, the viceroy appointed a governor. That governor, Gaspar de Portola, was a romantic. Instead of lining Alta California with soldiers awaiting confrontation, Portola installed an army of a different sort, the Franciscan friars. They planned for the construction of 21 missions along an Indian path that was soon called El Camino Real, the Royal Road, from San Diego to San Francisco, 500 miles away. Of course, every mission still had a military presidio attached to it to keep the peace, but the king got his wish. The missions took 42 years to build. No nation challenged the Franciscan friars or their Spanish sponsors, not even the local Yaanga. Roman Catholics would build California mission by mission. Situated just 6 miles from the San Gabriel mission, Los Angeles was not a mission. It was to be a pueblo, a community. On an expedition in 1769, Governor Portola named the local river El Río de Nuestra Señora de la Reina de Los Angeles de Porciuncula, the river of Our Lady, Queen of the Angels of Porciuncula. The expedition's journalists wrote that on August 2nd they encountered 8 heathen, the local Yaanga, who gave the strangers gifts of baskets and strings of beads made from shells. This friendly exchange marked the end of an era for the native people. In 1779, Portola's replacement governor, Felipe de Neve, would populate El Pueblo de Nuestra Señora, la Reina de Los Angeles de Porciuncula. It would no longer be the Bay of Smokes. When word went out across Mexico that Pobladores settlers were invited to this new land, the response was limp. Eventually, 11, impoverished farmers, this is the people we were just talking about, were recruited with promises of 7-acre farms, along with seed, tools, horses, 10 pesos a month, and a plot of land, 20 varas or 55 feet by 40 varas, 110 feet, facing the plaza they planned to build. With their wives and children, they formed a community of 44 pobladores, the first settlers in Los Angeles. They were full-blooded Spaniards. They were saying plus 4 Indians, 1 mestizo, 2 Negroes, and 2 mulattoes. All right, so we already went over the breakdown, right? More specifically a little bit, so you guys see that everybody has their own take on what these people were ethnically. 22 were children. Governor Neve designed a traditional pueblo where each residence faced a common plaza with a church in its center. September 4, 1781, the day that Governor Neve completed his plan, is recognized as the birthday of Los Angeles. The LA County Fair coincides each year to celebrate this date. As the pobladores went to work on the community, the friars at the San Gabriel Mission went to work on the Indians. Listen. While learning to communicate with the Yaanga or Yaanga, they produced foods from seeds never seen before by the natives. They provided shelter to the native people in exchange for their labor. Then the friars introduced stories about evil, about Satan, and why the red man was destined to a place called hell unless he was baptized immediately, all right? The religious propaganda, right? The mission was to get you to not be Indian. That was the mission. An entire culture was lured into submission. The friars were organized. They planned industries. At the mission, they taught the native hunter-gatherers about farming and the appeal of harvesting crops instead of scavenging for them. They soon had the Indians building a dam that diverted fresh water to irrigate the fields for the mission. They introduced citrus trees. They made olive oil. They built a granary and kept it stocked. Chickens and roosters held in captivity provided a steady supply of meat and eggs. Captivity being a foreign concept to the natives. Eventually, the mission even expanded to include cattle for the manufacture of cowhides and tallow. Friars gave the orders, but natives did the work. Free Indian labor was the basis for nearly all the mission's achievements. All right, so literally what they're trying to say is this is how they were able to build and found Los Angeles. Even these so called black founders using Indian labor, with the friars and the pobladores controlling all the suitable farmland. Native Americans were forced to work the lands they once occupied with abandon. Journalists who visited during those early decades decried what they witnessed. The Native Americans were slaves on their own land, slaves on their own land by these so-called black founders, right? And Spaniards and Indians and these people that were coming in from Mexico. In 1786, just 5 years after the founding of Los Angeles, visiting French sea captain Gallup de la Perrose wrote, "The moment an Indian allowed himself to be baptized, he relinquished every particle of liberty and subjected himself, body and soul, to tyranny from which there was no escape. The church then claimed him as its own and enforced his claim with the strong hand of power. If a baptized Indian ran away in an attempt to return to native independence, he was hunted down by soldiers from the presidio, brought back and lashed into submission. There were stocks and a whipping post in the mission courtyard for discipline." Right? You see what's going on? Despite the broken spirit of the Yaanga, the success of the Pueblo actually attracted more Native Americans into the mission. Indians from the outlying islands and from San Diego found their way to Los Angeles, where they too learned about eternal damnation, then offered themselves up for baptism. The captain continues, "In a short while after the establishment of the mission, resistance was almost unknown. 300 or 400 Indians, right, Native Americans, were driven to their labors by 3 or 4 soldiers like so many cattle. The following year, in an effort to break the friars' monopoly on free labor, the new governor delivered his instructions for the corporal guard of the Pueblo of Los Angeles. It set some rules for engaging the Native Americans, who now had the freedom to choose between the employment at the missions or the sprawling Pueblo associated ranchos. What the natives didn't get was land or wages. They also didn't get their god Chinich, for the friars destroyed every trace of pagan idolatry they encountered. In 1830, the U.S. Congress passed the Indian Removal Act, when Native Americans were shoved and slaughtered across the states, but there was no trail of tears in Los Angeles. With barely a skirmish, the land had been out of Yaanga control for decades. Its people were raped, beaten, and exploited, completely dependent upon the missionaries and the rancheros for their survival. Even children worked. In 1836, the last of the independent Yaangna, abandoned the ancestral land, all right, and the native culture ceased to exist in Los Angeles, all right, but you're still here. This is what I want to show you. Now look at this image, guys, all right? You guys see that? This is who they're saying. We got this image in different versions, looking a lot more so-called black too. It says Native women watch men play a game at a mission. You see that? Copper-colored tribes of America, Swarty, right? Even in that drawing, right? So that's what's going on here, right? Torrential rains flooded Governor Neve's original pueblo. The natives moved the Pobladores to higher ground in 1818, where they built a new plaza and a new church that still stand today at historic Olvera Street. It was added to the National Register of Historic Places in 1972. For generations, the plaza was the cultural gathering place for Los Angeles. A tragic surprise lurked when the natives mixed with the Catholics, syphilis, smallpox, measles, and every other European disease to which the natives lacked immunity. Living in crowded, unsanitary conditions, they died in droves. More than 6,000 indigenous people are buried at San Gabriel Mission. Wow, ravaged by diseases. So, was it all by disease or just murder, or just enslavement, By the time the missions were secularized and the last Franciscan departed in 1852, the Yaanga were decimated. Though the Franciscan friars came to Alta California with high ideals, their efforts resulted in genocide. From this sad start, one of the world's most vibrant cities was born. Native American muscle built the first structures, all right, providing the grist for subsequent generations. At the same time, Pobladores invested their souls to make Los Angeles work, all right? The people who came and founded it. And happily for us, they succeeded. Many generations later, this indentation of the coastline is still renowned as Bay of Smokes, all right? So just wanted to read that again, real quick. And again, we're just talking about El Pueblo de Los Angeles. That's the original, right, name. It says this is the plaza as seen from the Pico House. The old Plaza Church is to the left, the Brick Reservoir on the right. And in the center of the plaza was the original terminus of the Santa Madre Aqueduct, right? Looking like a lot of old towns of Costa Rica, from the same era. El pueblo de Nuestra Señora de la Reina de Los Ángeles del Río de Porciúncula, shortened to the Pueblo de Los Angeles, was the Spanish civilian pueblo settled in 1781, which became the American metropolis of Los Angeles. The pueblo was built using labor, all right, using labor from the adjacent village of Yaanga, right, Yaanga, and was totally dependent on local indigenous labor for its survival. Official settlements in Alta California were of three types: presidio, mission, religious, pueblo, and civil, military, right? The Pueblo de Los Angeles was the second pueblo created during the Spanish colonization of California. All right, so they were heavily dependent on the Yaanga, right? Yaanga. And who are the Yaanga? Just to get a little background, right? Yaanga, look at that. I know that word sounds familiar to a lot of you who know about a famous so-called runaway slave that rebelled in Mexico, Yaanga, huh? Yaanga. Yaanga was a large Tonga. The Tonga are indigenous people of California from the Los Angeles Basin and the Southern Channel Islands. Okay? This is, that's the Tonga and the Keith village. The Keith are the historically and ethnographically documented lineal descendants of the Mission Indians of San Gabriel and indigenous people of California. They started calling them the Gabrieleños, a lot of these people, originally located near what is now downtown Los Angeles. That's where the Yaanga was, just west of Los Angeles River and beneath US Route 101. People from the village were recorded as Javit in missionary records, although they were known as Yangavit, Javitam, or Javitem among the people. It is unclear what the exact population of Yaanga was prior to colonization. They don't know how many people were there, or you don't want to tell us. You don't want to tell us. So how do they know there wasn't hundreds of thousands or even millions? If you don't know, although it was recorded as the largest and most influential village in the region, it was heavily populated. The Yaanga had Los Angeles before these founders, these colonizers came, right? These are people of all colors. You see, black on black, more on more. It's all good. But this is what I want you to understand. There's a whole history, leave out a lot of context. The Yangavid were treated as slave laborers during the mission period by Franciscan padres to construct and work at San Gabriel Mission. So they helped build that town, San Gabriel, and that mission, and Nuestra Señora Reina de Los Angeles Asistencia, and the ones they were building here in Los Angeles, and forced laborers for the Spanish, Mexican, and American settlers. All right. They were the forced laborers of the founders to construct and expand Los Angeles. I told you they were working for them, so-called black founders too. The colonizers' dependency on Yaanga for forced labor is thought to be a reason for its ability to survive longer than most indigenous villages in the region. However, after the founding of Pueblo de Los Angeles in 1781, the Yaanga increasingly began to look more like a refugee camp than a traditional community, and following relentless pressure on the inhabitants to assimilate, the community was eventually dispersed. Okay? The original village seems to have only remained intact until about 1813, after being forcibly relocated several times, eventually eastward across the Los Angeles River. It was razed to the ground by the Los Angeles City Council under the American occupation in 1847. Buried intact deposits from Yaanga have been found throughout downtown Los Angeles, such as in the vicinity of Alameda Street, Bella Union Hotel, Union Station, Plaza Church, and the Metropolitan Water District headquarters. All right. It says that Yaanga, Yanga or Yangna or Ianga, written as Yangna in Spanish, was described in contemporary sources as being a Tonga word meaning place of the poison oak. Tonga, huh? Not African. Tonga, not African. All right. So I just wanted to get that, read a little bit of that history too, not to leave out that the fact that there was people already there and something really bad happened to them. All right, so real quick, we're gonna go into a little more of the background history of what they have to say, in general, when you do these historic courses, the history courses, what they tell you to read, source this guy, Bancroft. This is one of them. So it says the works of Hewitt Howie Bancroft from volume 18 of that. But this is History of California, volume 1, from the same guy, right? This is from 1884. We go to chapter 16 of this book. It says, a new reglamento, colonists and recruits, Los Angeles founded, right? And it says at the beginning of 1781, the new regulation for the government of California went into effect provisionally by order of Comandante General Crux of the Provincias Internas de Occidente, receiving the formal approval of King Carlos III, October 24th of the same year, but dating back to the 1st of June, 1779, in its original drawing up by Neve. New regulation provided for the occupation of the Santa Barbara Channel region, in accordance with Neve's original idea, by the founding of a new presidio and mission of Santa Barbara in the center and two missions, San Buenaventura and Purísima, at the extremities of the Channel coast. It also made provision for two pueblos, the one already founded at San Jose, and another to be established in the Rio Porciuncula and called Nuestra Señora de Los Angeles. For the 4 presidios and the 11 missions and 2 pueblos under their protection, a force of 4 lieutenants, 4 sub-lieutenants or alfereces, 6 sergeants, 16 corporals, and 172 soldiers, 1 surgeon, and 5 master mechanics was allowed at an annual expense for salaries of $53,453. All right, so look who's also there to help these people settle. According to the new regulations, settlers were to be obtained from the older provinces and established in California, to be granted each a house lot and a tract of land for cultivation, to be supplied at the beginning with the necessary livestock, implements, and seed, which advance was to be gradually repaid within 5 years from the produce of the land, to be paid each an annual sum of $116.50 for 2 years, and of $60 for the next 3 years. The payment to be in clothing and other necessary articles at cost prices, to have as communities the use of government lands for pasturage and the obtaining of wood and water, and finally to be free for 5 years from all titles or other taxes. Government aid in the way of money and cattle was to be given only to colonists who left their own country to come to California. But in respect of lands, other colonists, such as discharged soldiers, were entitled to equal privileges. In return for aid thus received, the colonists were simply required to sell to the presidios exclusively the surplus products of their lands at fair prices to be fixed from time to time by the government in accordance with market rates in the southern provinces. In the total absence of other purchases, this requirement would for many years at least prove a decided benefit rather than a burden. Each settler must keep himself and horses and musket in readiness for military service and an emergency. Other conditions were imposed, but all more directly advantageous to the settler than to the government. Thus the pobladores must take their farms together within pueblo limits of 4 square leagues according to the Spanish law and custom. They could not alienate their land, nor in any way encumber it with mortgages or otherwise. They must build houses, dig irrigating ditches, cultivate, own, and keep and repair certain implements, and maintain a certain number of animals. They could not kill or otherwise dispose of their livestock except under certain regulations to ensure its increase. Neither one, neither could one person own more than 50 animals of a kind and thus monopolize the pueblo wealth. And finally, each pueblo must perform certain community work in the construction of dams and irrigating canals on roads and streets, and a church and the necessary town buildings, and tilling the propios or pueblo lands, from the product of which municipal expenses were to be paid. All right, so this is what was required of these founders, right, of Los Angeles, right? This is what they're saying. There's a lot of rules, you see. But again, they were using who? The Indians to do all their work. Municipal officers were at the beginning appointed by the governor, but afterwards chosen by the people. This system of colonization was in every respect a wise one and well adapted to the needs of the country. If it was not successful, it is to the character of the colonists, the mildness of the climate, and the opposition of the missionaries that we must look for the causes of failure. A little more ahead it says, meanwhile, preparations for the proposed new establishments were going on slowly, preparations that had begun with Neve's arrival in the country. His report on June 1777 on the means and importance of controlling the 8 or 10,000 natives, all right, the 10,000 natives of the 21 channel rancherias. Oh, these natives, they had to subdue the local people. And his provisional founding of San Jose. General Ocroy approved the governor's schemes for new establishments in September 1778, and some correspondence on minor details followed. Neve, as we have seen, included his plans in the regulation of June 1779, which Croix approved in September. Actual operations toward the carrying out of the plans were begun at the end of the year by Rivera y Moncada, Lieutenant Governor of Lower California, who at Neve's order crossed the Gulf and went to Arizpe to receive from Croix certain instructions which bore the date of December 27, 1779, and by which Rivera was entrusted with the recruiting. This is where they were looking for the people to go establish Los Angeles. Recruiting, where? In Sinaloa and Sonora. That's in Mexico. This is where they got the people, more than half of them so-called black, right? The other one's Indians and like literally mostly Indians, the other half, like 1 or 2 Spaniards supposedly, right? So they got all these people where? In Sinaloa and Sonora, of soldiers and settlers for California. The former for the Santa Barbara Presidio and missions, the latter for the new pueblo at the Rio Porciuncula, to be called Queen of the Angels, right? Or Los Angeles, the Queen of Los Angeles. And they got all these people from Sinaloa and Sonora, right? These so-called black founders, right? Pay attention to free people, right? Free so-called blacks. Yeah. A little further ahead, it says Governor Neve issued his instructions for founding the pueblo of La Reina de Los Angeles from San Gabriel on the 26th of August, while agreeing with or literally occupying the clauses of the regulation which I have translated in the preceding note. This document contains many additional particulars respecting the survey and distribution of lots. Of subsequent proceedings for a time, we only know that the pueblo was founded September 4th, with 12 settlers and their families, 46 persons in all, whose names are given and whose blood was a strange mixture, listen, a strange mixture of Indian and Negro, okay, with here and there a trace of Spanish, with a little Spanish. That could also be melanated folks, it could be light-skinned Spanish, but they're letting you know here in general, Indian and so-called Negro. Indians were Negroes too, so make it make sense. And Negroes were Indians too, so make it make sense. All right, you guys see that? All right, Indian and Negro with a little bit of Spanish here and there. 2 of the original recruits, Miguel Villa and Rafael Mesa, had deserted before reaching the country. 1 was still absent in the peninsula, and 3 were described as useless, but the rest went to work and soon the governor reported satisfactory progress in their irrigating ditch and mud-roofed huts of palisades, the latter before the end of 1784 being replaced by adobe houses, the needed public buildings having also been erected, and a church begun of the same material. Some changes also took place among the settlers during these few years. So, just to corroborate, a couple sources for you to have your records as well. It says here California's Black Pioneers, a brief historical survey by Kenneth G. Good. We're going to get into this book a little bit more. We're just going to reference it real quick just for today's topic, okay? Forward by Wilson Riles. It says here on page 11, Blacks also played a significant role in the founding of early California towns. Of the first 46 settlers of California's second civic pueblo, founded September 4, 1781, Nuestra Señora la Reina de Los Angeles de Porciancula, shortened to Los Angeles, Blacks and Mulattoes, number 26, recruited from Sinaloa and Mexico. The black settlers of the pueblo soon began to replace their crude huts with adobe houses, and in 1784 laid the foundations for the church and several public buildings. 2 years later, they were issued deeds to the land by the Spanish government. One mulatto settler, Francisco Reyes, was elected to serve as alcalde or mayor during the 1790s. All right. So-called black founders. All right, so here we're just going to get into this pretty good article. You can find this in Phylon, volume 27, 1966, number 3, right? It says Black Pioneers, the Spanish-speaking Afro-Americans, so-called Afro-Americans of the Southwest, right? Jack D. Forbes. By Jack D. Forbes, again, getting the draw from Jack D. Forbes again, all right? Again, the Black Pioneers, the Spanish-speaking Afro-Americans of the Southwest. All right, we're just going to get this, see what it has to say. It's going to relate to what we're learning today a little bit. So, and we barely flop a little ahead. It says here, it is not surprising that California was subdued by Spanish troops of mixed origin. Spanish of mixed origin? Persons of Negro ancestry had participated in most or all of the early sea expeditions along the Pacific coast on all. And during the 18th century, they formed a substantial part of Baja California's population. In 1790, for example, there were 844 non-Indians in that province, 243 of whom were classed as Españoles. That could include people of color, 183 as mulattoes, all right, we already know, and 418 as castas. As caste, what does that mean? Miscellaneous mixed bloods. They don't know. Oh, you're going off what they look like? What could they be? So we're guessing. This is what I'm saying, guys. A lot of time they were guessing. Thus, persons of recorded African ancestry constituted 21% of the population. This is according to what they were calling Negro. And again, that's the hijack with the African. While other mixed bloods composed 49% and Españoles equal 28%. Altogether, 71% of the Spanish-speaking settlers were officially of mixed origin. And they formed large colonies at the mines of Santa Ana, right? 157 mulattoes, 204 castas, 133 Españoles. Wait till you see the images I'm going to show you guys of the caste systems of Mexico, so you guys can see who they were calling Español and casta mulatto. And a lot of those included people that look like so-called black folks. I'm going to show you guys. In the provincial capital of Laredo. All right, so these figures are comparable to the combined statistics for both California and Baja California in 1794, which revealed that of 1,469 Spanish-speaking persons, 23% were de color quebrado, example, part African, or 20% were mestizos, all their classifications, right? Adding these together, 52% of the Hispanos were officially recorded in mixed origin. That more than 1 out of every 5 persons in Baja California in the 1790s was of part Negro origin may come as a surprise. But in addition, it is probable that many persons classified as Spaniards or castas also possessed. This is what I'm telling you, listen. But it's also probable, listen, that many persons classified as Spaniards or castas also possess some degree of African background or were black themselves. You see? Negro, so-called black folks. This is what I was just telling you. He just told you. In any case, many settlers from the peninsula brought their African ancestry with them to Upper California after 1769, and still other part Negro persons were recruited in northern Sinaloa and Sonora. Other, this is the ones that, right? That's where they got the people for Los Angeles. For example, the Juan Bautista de Anza expedition, 1775, included 7 mulattoes of the 29 men, or approximately 1 out of 4. More revealing, however, are census records for individuals, communities, and districts within California. A list of the first settlers in Los Angeles in 1781 includes the following Afro-American and part African families. Okay, here we go again. Antonio Mesa, Negro, 36, from Los Alamos, married to Ana Gertrudis Lopez Molada. So we got this earlier, right? Manuel Cambrero Mulatto. His wife is a mulatto. Jose Navarro, mestizo. All right, the kids are all mulattoes. His wife is mulatto. Jose Moreno mulatto, married to Guadalupe. Basilio Rosas, he's an Indian. All right, remember we got this earlier. Luis Quintero, Negro. We got more earlier. Luis Quintero, Negro from Guadalajara. All right, we had that earlier. The total population of Los Angeles in 1781 consisted of 46 persons, of whom 26 were African or part African. And the other ones were Indians, right? What they're classifying still as Indian, and like 2 Spaniards, literally like 1 or 2 Spaniards who could also have some African, as he said earlier, or be so-called black too. The process of intermarriage whereby the Negro stock was being absorbed is revealed by the above list of settlers. 2 of the adult males were classified as Negro, but their wives were mulattoes, and their children therefore also were mulattoes. It should be borne in mind that the wives could have possessed Indian ancestry, in addition to some Caucasian background or European. One of the adult males listed above was an Indian, while another was a mestizo. In both cases, the wives were mulattoes, and the 9 children, or 19.5% of the population, were Indian, Negro, Caucasian hybrids, huh? Indians and black Europeans, huh? That's what you mean. An examination of all the families in Los Angeles reveals the following marriage patterns. So it says Negro, mulatto, 2 families, Indian, Indian, 2 families, mulatto, mulatto, tomato, Espanol, Indian, mestizo, and you see the rest, right? Of the 11 Los Angeles families, 7 involved some degree of intermarriage and hybridization, while 2 involved persons already of hybrid ancestry. Only the 2 all-Indian marriages failed to involve the process of race mixture. By 1790, some significant changes had occurred in Los Angeles. Almost 9 years later, what happened? The total population had increased to 141, of whom 73 were classified as Españoles, 39 as mestizos, and 22 as mulattoes, and 7 as Indians. These figures are inaccurate, however, because many of the original settlers of 1781 had experienced a change of race. Look what was going on in the intervening years. They were starting to whiten them, ethnic cleansing. The following list illustrates this process. So, for example, Pablo Rodriguez, he was an Indian, he became a coyote. Manuel Camero, he was mulatto, he became mestizo. You see what they're telling you, right? They had changed. The changes in racial classification were all away from Indian or mulatto and towards Espanol. People would rather be called Spanish. Everyone acquired some fictitious Caucasian ancestry and shed Negro backgrounds. You see, they were hiding their Negro, they were passing as white, basically, becoming, in effect, lighter as they moved up the social scale. Wow. This process had undoubtedly taken place among the individuals who were newcomers to Los Angeles in 1790. But the census data are not at hand to ascertain their earlier classifications, right? Classifications, they might have been changed, they might have been different, they might have been people of color. In any case, by correcting those inaccuracies of which we are aware, the part African population has increased from 22 to 32 or 22%. Now we see is a lot more. The post-1781 settlers in Los Angeles include the following part African families. So, and remember, we got to still dodge the hijack where they call African and black and all this. So, Jose Ontiveros Mestizo, 47, from Real de Rosario, married to Ana Maria Carrasca Molaro. All right, then we got Santiago de la Cruz Pico, Mestizo. So these are all black folks, right? They call them Mestizo, Espanol, Molaro, Francisco Reyes, Domingo Aruz, right? These are all melanated people. Jose Faustino de la Cruz Molaro. These families, of course, illustrate the complex process of hybridization significantly for an understanding of the place of the part Africans in California society or black folks, right, in California society. Francisco Reyes became the alcalde or mayor of the community, and the descendants of Santiago Pico became prominent political leaders and wealthy ranchers. Continuing just to corroborate some more sources, says here The History of California by Theodore H. Hittel. This is volume 1. Says here, on September 1st, 1781, accordingly having already issued various instructions in reference to the subject, Governor Felipe de Neve collected together the pobladores or settlers and their families who had been recruited by Rivera and Moncada in Sinaloa and sent up by the way of Lower California for the express purpose and conducting them to the spot selected 4 leagues west of San Gabriel, laid out and founded the new pueblo. The location was a choice and beautiful one on the west bank of the Little River, running there in a southerly direction through a delightful valley among hills and about 20 miles north of San Pedro Bay. This river had been first seen by European men on the first expedition of Governor Portola and his companions in search of Monterrey in 1769. They had reached it on August 2nd, and on account of the festival of the day previous known in the Catholic calendar as that of Nuestra Señora de los Angeles de Porciuncula, and given in that name. And it was for this reason that the settlement, founded on its bank, received the name of El Pueblo de la Reina de los Angeles, or more commonly, that of Nuestra Señora de los Angeles de Porciuncula. The river, for a long time called the Porciuncula, was afterwards and is now generally known as the Los Angeles, all right, the Los Angeles River. The original settlers appeared to have consisted of 12 men, 11 women, 11 boys, and 12 girls. The men were 2 Spaniards, 4 Indians, 1 half-breed, 2 Negroes, 1 mulatto, and 1 called a Chino. You see how all the different books got them all described a little different? You see, but that's what I was trying to tell you guys. The women were 5 Indians and 6 mulattoes. They appeared to have gone to work under the directions of the governor and in charge of the corporal and 3 soldiers. Lots were assigned for cultivation as well as for building. Houses of palisades plastered with mud in the usual style of the day were put up, and an irrigating canal or ditch projected and constructed. As the same governor who had laid out and superintended the settlement of San Jose also laid out and superintended the settlement of Los Angeles, and as the objects and circumstances of both were about the same, the establishment were similar in general character. In both cases, the spots chosen were selected with a view to agricultural purposes. Both had extensive arable and irrigable grounds around them, in which almost everything in the way of grain, fruits, or vegetables could be produced, and with a luxuriance elsewhere unsurpassed. San Jose, being further north, was better calculated for the hardier fruits, while Los Angeles, whose sun was warmer, would also ripen the productions of subtropical climes. For grain, the extensive plains about San Jose were more favorable than those near Los Angeles, while for oranges, figs, and pomegranates, the fields at Los Angeles were best. But both were good for vines and for almost all the grains, fruits, and vegetables of the temperate zones that could be named. Inequality of temperature and moisture, causing freshness of verdure, San Jose excelled. But in topographical beauty and variety of landscape, Los Angeles had the advantage. It is not intended to say that the Spaniards or Mexicans in either case ever turned these capabilities to full account, but that the Pueblo grounds possessed some advantages was plain to everyone who examined them. The slightest trials showed that with anything like skilled treatment, the field would overflow with plenty and abundance, and all the labor ever bestowed upon planting and cultivation was many and many times over again repaid by the returns. All right, just continuing real quick. We're almost done. Just want to show us a couple things here still. We pretty much got most of the good info. It says here, black people who made the Old West. Remember all these sources. We might come back to a lot of these when we're talking about other people. All right. And this is by William Lauren Katz. Make sure to support those people as well. Again, this is for um, critique, education, commentary, fair use. And we actually go to a chapter where they're talking about the video I did yesterday regarding William Leidesdorff. There's a whole other book talking about him, right? Who he was. Remember, he was the founder. He was a so-called black man, founder of San Francisco, possibly Sephardic Jewish and Carib Indian ancestry. But right here in the first page, it says in the second paragraph that at this time, California was an outlying Mexican province. By 1790, 18% of the residents of San Francisco, 24% of San Jose, 20% of Santa Barbara, and 18% of Monterey were of African descent. Dodge the hijack. They're saying Negro, but these were people who were classified. A lot of the people who were still not classified, they were being called natives, Indians, Mexicans, Spanish, whatever else. A lot of those were so-called black too. Just want to emphasize that. It says Los Angeles was founded by 44 persons comprising 11 families. Of these, 26 were black, 2 were Caucasian. Those are the 2 Spaniards, right? They're calling them Caucasians. See how they change people up, right? You guys saw all the different classifications, and the others were Indian or of mixed Indian Caucasian ancestry. All of a sudden, there's Caucasian in here, right? Neither the Catholic Church nor Spanish authorities ever sought to set people apart by their skin color or their ancestors, although Spanish blood was considered superior. When couples arrived at the decision to marry, the church and civil authorities did not stand in their way. Blacks, Caucasians, Indians, and foreigners from Europe or South America were free to marry whom they chose. A darker skin color did not keep a Californian from attaining wealth or political power. Maria Rita Valdez, listen to this, was the granddaughter of 2 of the black founding members of Los Angeles. Maria Rita Valdez, right? That's her last name. Her ancestors were black, right? They're telling you right here, and they were the founders of Los Angeles. Listen to what she owned. It says she owned Rancho Rodeo de las Aguas, which is better known today as Beverly Hills, okay? Beverly Hills was owned by black folks first. You guys hear that? That was her people's land. Beverly Hills, right, was owned by black founders, black founding members of Los Angeles. All right, Beverly Hills. Says Francisco Reyes, another black resident of the province, owned the San Fernando Valley. All right, a black person owned the San Fernando Valley, the whole San Fernando Valley. In the 1790s, he sold it and became mayor of Los Angeles. By 1845, Pio Pico was governor of California. In the 1790 census, his grandmother had been listed as mulatto, meaning a mixture of black and white parents. That's what you think it means, right? Then it goes on to talk about Leidesdorff, right? William Leidesdorff. We got that on our video yesterday. Right? Just thought that would be interesting if you guys didn't know about Beverly Hills and San Fernando Valley. Okay, again, it includes these people who we're talking about today. All right, all right. So we're gonna end it right there. Okay, I just wanted you guys to be aware, but it's something we definitely shouldn't forget. They have tried to kind of hide this history and whitewash it, so this is important to bring up. I know a lot of people think we're just trying to blackwash, but this makes you uncomfortable, then you are not ready to let go of your own stereotypes or prejudices. And that's it. You got to be able to empty your cup and learn new things. These were your founders of what today is a metropolis, a major city in the world, Los Angeles. Here's an image of it. But it started out with these 11 families coming in from Mexico who were, in general, probably all people of color and different shades of that. Hope you guys enjoyed today's reading and presentation. Again, more pioneers of the West. I'm going to actually do a lot more videos. It's actually a lot. All right. I got more coming along with other topics. As always, I like to mix it up here and there. Appreciate everybody that tuned in all the way to the end. Listen to me. And I'll give you your time back. Appreciate you taking the time to be here as well. Shout out to all my Patreons, all my new channel members, all the longtime followers. I appreciate you guys. Check out my Instagram. All right. Kurimeo Ahau, same name. All right. the Black founders of Los Angeles, the so-called Black founders of the city of Los Angeles. Yeah, much love and respect. Pura vida, mi gente. Wow.